bows and bow ties. So I was having a conversation with my mother this weekend, and we just happened to be talking about healing from past traumas and all this other stuff, right? I did a video before on Black women need to heal, and so we were talking about something that transpired maybe a month ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I can't remember when it was. A family member came to visit a sister of mine, and I guess because I think she just wanted to make amends in some of the things. But I was telling my mother about this funny thing called healing. Okay, for those of you who are new to my channel, I'm the Black Opinionated woman, also known as a B.O.W. So go ahead and just like this already, because you're gonna find me to be amazing. I was talking with my mom, and so when I was talking to her about this thing called healing, I told her how I was listening to something on YouTube maybe a week or two ago. I'm not sure exactly when. And there was a woman who I guess she's in recovery from addiction. Okay. She was in recovery from addiction, and I think, now look, these are just my opinions, okay? So as she was talking, I think her guilt kicked in, because she was talking about how, like, hey, I've apologized for everything that I've done, and I'm making basically amends and all these things, and people need to get to the point where they move on. And that really kind of struck a nerve for me. I'm going to a person that I worked with a long time ago said you have to assume noble intent when people are doing things. So I'm going to assume that maybe she was just a little clumsy with her wording. What do I mean by that? She said that, she has apologized and she's moved on, and people need to move on. I'm going to assume she meant you need to get the healing that, or the help that you need. There was another caller that said, wait a second, just because you have moved on doesn't mean the person who was affected has dealt with everything. So let me say this. When I was talking with my mother, and she agreed for the most part, because, we were just talking about some old family issues and stuff like that. I said, multiple things can be true at the same time. When you are suffering, or if you have suffered from something that was traumatic, or whatever, just whatever, dysfunction, there is a difference between seeking help and setting boundaries. Meaning, people can forgive, but maybe for their health, they put a boundary there. Or maybe they don't want to be triggered again. They don't want to, they haven't forgotten it, but they don't allow people in their space. And that's where I'm going with this. I feel like oftentimes, this was my big issue. I won't say big issue. I would say this is what I want people to take away. If you offended someone, if you caused trauma to someone, you caused the trauma. Can you guys see me? Because I was like blinded by all of this. Let me see. Oh, Lord Jesus. Let's go with this. If you have caused trauma, if you have caused trauma to someone, okay, and then you recognize, oh my goodness, I've hurt someone, and you go out of the way to do the work on yourself, and you go out of the way to make amends, or try to make amends with the person you caused trauma to. That person that has been the recipient of whatever it is that you have done, they're not obligated to hug and kiss it out. Their process is different. And I think what happens is when people commit these faux pas, these these things are like, they cause this trauma because they're ready to move on. They feel like everyone else should. You should just move on. Not understanding the effect that it may have had on the person, the person who was the victim of whatever. And so I said, when I hear people say things like, well, you just need to get over it, move on, I'm like, the audacity. For example, if someone assaults someone, whether it's physical, sexual, whatever it is, if someone assaults you, okay, just because that person who committed the assault is like, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, blah, 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 and they're doing the work, let's say they're doing the work, doesn't mean that you, the person who's assaulted, now has to just be like, okay, because I forgive you now, we can be in the same space. You still can say, I have a boundary and I don't want you in my space. Thank you for that. I appreciate you giving me the apology. I appreciate that you're doing the work. But do understand, I don't desire you to be in my space because that was a boundary that was crossed for me that that's just too far for me. So I think for me, when people are dealing with things, there is a difference between accepting apologies and the forgiveness and all of that and setting boundaries. So I believe, in my opinion, in the community, actually, what I think is going on, there's multiple things going on. I believe that, and I'm going to speak for just black women, I don't like to speak for black men. I mean, it's evident that they've got some things going on. You can see it in how they act, how they speak, how everything about how they're moving right now. But there's some denial there, and you got to let people be where they are. But I'm going to speak for black women. Black women, it is evident that they are not doing the work to heal. Like, they can say they're going to counseling, but there's a difference between saying, okay, now I'm in some sort of peaceful space. If you have to set a boundary, then set boundaries. You don't have to allow people in your space, right? But I do believe that there are women who claim to be on all these freaking journeys. I think it's just smoking mirrors, if you ask me. They're talking about a lot of it. But then I listen to how they talk in general. I'm like, you're not healing. Because people who are going through the process of healing, they look different. They move differently. They talk differently, right? There's certain things they won't even engage anymore because they know either it's just there's no upside to it. It's not going to produce any fruit that's edible, right? They know this, or maybe they know that it is a trigger. But there are women who are deeply hurt and they say all these things, or maybe they do, I don't know. I just feel like you can tell there are women who are hurt, especially when you go out on these platforms, if you listen to people, and it's not that they don't have good talking points, but like I said, they are not healing. Because like I said, people who are healing, they move differently, they talk differently, they engage differently. So certain things they're not going to allow them to be triggered by. There's certain things that even the language, the rhetoric that they use, it will change. So that's that part. The second thing is for people who are healing, I think it is okay to set boundaries. So for those who have committed the offense or whatever, right? When you have hurt someone, they don't have to allow you in their space either. They can accept your apology and forgive you. But maybe for certain things, they're like, you know what? This is a boundary that has been crossed that I can't have ever let you be in my space again. Maybe because it will be a trigger. Maybe because I have nothing but negative memories. I shared that with my mom. I was telling her about some things that had irked me in the past about some people in my family. And she handles it differently. She's like, well, I've forgiven people for, but I'm like, just because you have, that's not my process. My process is I can forgive you for certain things, but for some people, there was a boundary that had been crossed. And I have found, for me, and everybody is different, for me to heal on certain things, I had to remove people from my life. You don't get access to me, ever. And that's how when I see people on these platforms, I'm like, ooh, you're not really healing from it. You're not. So I'll say this. People who commit whatever offense it is, it could be emotional abuse, it could be theft, it could be SADV, I don't know, maybe bullying, whatever it is. I don't know. I believe that just because you're ready to move on, you don't tell people that they need to move on. Now, I will say the people who were the victims of said behavior, they are responsible for getting the help they need. They are responsible for doing the work on themselves. They're not responsible for what happened to them in the past, but they are responsible for how they move and navigate their life in the present and in the future. So, when that woman was saying like, well, I just feel like people need to just move on, I'm going to assume that she was just being clumsy with her wording, because you can't just tell people to move on. You don't know where they are in their healing or that journey, because we're on a lot of journeys in the community. That's just where I'm at with it. I still feel like I need to do another video on all these freaking journeys that we're on, because I'm like, well, what's the end date? What's the end? What's the goal, right? How do you know that you have arrived? When do you arrive? Like, what does this look like? What does this journey look like? What things were put in place? Anyway, let me get off of here. You go ahead and subscribe if you like what I'm saying. If you thought that this was an interesting video, as you should, go ahead and hit that subscribe, and give me the thumbs up, because I might be delusional.